What if the man shouting at you in a language you barely remembered from your childhood turned out to be the one person who could change your entire life forever? In the heart of a glittering city hotel filled with noise and pride, a young waitress named Emma moved like a shadow between tables, carrying trays heavier than her dreams, her uniform always spotless, her smile always fake. She had mastered the art of surviving quietly. Her father's hospital bills waited at home, her landlord's. Warnings echoed in her head. But tonight was different. A new guest had arrived, one that made the entire staff nervous, a Japanese billionaire CEO, known for firing people with a single look. His name was Mr. Kaito. Everyone spoke about him like a storm. Polite on the surface but dangerous underneath. Emma had seen rich people before, but not like this. He walked into the restaurant with eyes that could slice through steel, calm but sharp, like he was measuring every soul in the room. He sat down quietly, placed his phone on the table and waited. The waiter assigned to him stumbled over every word. The man stayed silent for 10 seconds, then suddenly barked something in Japanese so harsh that half the staff froze. The young waiter turned pale and ran to the kitchen, leaving the billionaire staring at his half-poured glass of wine. Emma didn't understand what was said, but she felt the tension around him. The manager whispered, "Don't go near that table." Emma, don't make it worse, but something in her heart moved. Maybe it was the way he sat alone, surrounded by fear. Maybe it was the memory of her mother's voice, whispering soft Japanese words while reading bedtime stories years ago before she died. That small piece of her past still lived inside her, hidden behind years of struggle. The billionaire snapped his fingers again, his tone sharp, another command in Japanese echoing across the restaurant. The silence that followed felt heavy. All eyes turned to him, but no one dared move. And then Emma stepped forward, her hands shaking slightly, her voice quiet but steady. "Excuse me, sir, may I help you?" He turned slowly, his eyes cold as winter, and said another line, this time even louder. The sound of his anger made a glass tremble on the table. The guests around stared in shock. Emma's chest tightened, but something inside her recognized a single word. It was a phrase her mother once used in lessons. She took a small breath and replied in perfect fluent Japanese, "Please, sir, calm. Don't tell me exactly what you need." The billionaire froze, his mouth half open. The room went still, forks stopped mid-air. Waiters stared at her as if she had just spoken magic. His eyes narrowed, not with anger now, but with disbelief. His voice softened. "You speak Japanese," he said quietly. She nodded, just enough to show respect. "The right kind, sir," she replied, and before he could answer, she continued again. In Japanese, "Shall I bring you the roasted tea you mentioned earlier?" For a moment, time stopped. His anger vanished, replaced by something deeper, something unreadable. He leaned back in his chair, a slow smile touching the corner of his mouth. Everyone around felt the air shift. The manager's face turned white. He whispered to another waiter, "Did she just speak Japanese?" Emma poured his tea, her hands trembling slightly but her heart steady. The man watched her every move, silent and focused. After a long moment he spoke again, this time in a low, calm tone, only she could hear. "Tell me your name." She hesitated. "Emma, sir." He nodded slowly, like he was storing that name somewhere important. Then in English he said softly, "You are full of surprises, Miss Emma." Her breath caught in her throat. She didn't know why, but she felt like this moment wasn't just about tea or language. It was the beginning of something dangerous, something that would pull her out of her quiet, hidden life into a storm she could never have imagined. The next morning, the hotel buzzed like a hive. Everyone was whispering about the girl who spoke to the billionaire in his own language. Some said she would be promoted. Others said she would be fired. Emma ignored the stares. She only cared about one thing. Why had that man looked at her like he already knew her? When she entered the dining hall, the billionaire was there again. Same table, same calm face. He raised his hand slightly, calling her forward. No words, just a gesture. She walked over, her heart pounding. He spoke softly, this time in Japanese. "You remind me of someone, but I can't remember who." Emma bowed politely. "Perhaps my mother, sir," she said without thinking. He tilted his head. "Your mother was Japanese?" "No, sir," she laughed nervously. "She just loved your culture. She taught me the language when I was a child before she passed away. For a moment his eyes softened, but then he asked, "Tell me something, Miss Emma, why did you help me last night? Everyone else avoided me." She hesitated, searching for the truth. "Because you looked like you needed to be heard, sir, not managed." He smiled faintly. "People rarely listen anymore," he said in English this time. He invited her to sit, which broke every rule in the book. The manager watched from a distance, his face turning red, but he didn't dare interrupt. As she sat, he poured tea for her himself, an impossible sight for a man of his status. "Do you know why I came here?" he asked. "No, sir, to rest," maybe she guessed. He smiled a little too long. "Rest is a lie, Miss Emma. I came here to watch people, not the hotel, not the city, but people, to see who they are when no one is watching." His words sent a strange chill through her. She didn't understand, but something about the way he looked at her made her feel as if she was already part of a test. "After a pause, he said very quietly, "There is a story my father used to tell me. 2 birds fly into a storm. One hides, one flies through. Which one survives?" She smiled softly. "The one who flies through, sir, because it learns how to face the wind." He nodded. "You are wiser than you look, Emma." The rest of the staff watched in disbelief. The girl they ignored was now sitting with the richest man in the building, and he looked at her like she was the only person who existed. When she left the table, he said something that made her stop at the door in fluent English. "Meet me at the rooftop garden tonight. I have something for you." That night, the city glowed like a sea of glass. She went to the rooftop, nervous but curious. The cold wind brushed her hair. He was standing near the edge, looking over the lights with a small wooden box beside him. When she approached, he said without turning around, "Do you believe people can hide their true selves forever?" She frowned. "Maybe for a while, but not forever." Why, he turned then, his eyes darker now. "Because I think you're hiding too, Miss Emma." Her breath caught. "How do you mean?" He opened the box. Inside was an old photo of her mother standing beside a younger version of him, smiling in Japan long before Emma was born. She froze, her heart pounding. "What is this?" He smiled gently. "That's what I want to find out, and you're going to help me." Emma's knees felt weak as she stared at the photo, her mother's face smiling under the soft sunlight of a place she had never seen before. Her breath trembled. "How do you have this?" she whispered. He looked at the picture as if it was a memory he had been hiding for years. "She was my translator decades ago," he said calmly. "The only person who ever dared to correct me. She saved my company once when I was a young man full of pride and noise. Then one day she disappeared." Emma felt her pulse in her throat. "My mother never told me about you. She said maybe she didn't want me to know." He smiled faintly. "Maybe she wanted to protect you from the kind of man I was." She looked at him confused. "You said was." He nodded slowly. "I learned the cost of power, Miss Emma. It takes everything kind people have to give. That is why I left Japan years ago to build something without kindness." She looked at the skyline and then at him. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because," he said, stepping closer, "I see her in you, the same patience, the same fire when you speak your mind. I need someone like her again, and I think fate brought you here." He handed her a small silver key. "This opens a drawer in my suite. Read what's inside, then decide if you still want to talk to me tomorrow." That night, Emma couldn't sleep. Her mind kept circling around the photo, the key, the way his voice sounded when he said fate. She waited until morning, and then went to his suite trembling. She used the key to open the drawer. Inside were papers, blueprints, and contracts, all with her mother's handwriting, but signed with another name. Under the documents lay a single letter, sealed in a thin red envelope with her name written on it. Her fingers shook as she opened it. Inside was her mother's handwriting. "My dear Emma, if you're reading this, it means he found you. There are things I never told you about the man called Kaito. He was not only my boss, he was the man I once loved but could never trust. He built empires out of silence and tested people with lies. If he ever reaches out to you, remember one thing. Never believe his first truth." Emma felt her world tilt. She looked up at the door just as it opened. Kaito stood there watching her, the calm mask gone, replaced by something raw, almost desperate. "You found it," he said quietly. She held up the letter, her eyes burning. "You lied to her, didn't you?" He didn't answer, only said softly, "Not everything is a lie." Sometimes a lie is the only way to find what is real. Her anger clashed with confusion. She wanted to scream, but his next words froze her heart. Your mother didn't die in an accident. Emma, someone made sure she couldn't tell her story, and I have been trying to find whoever since. Emma felt the ground vanish beneath her feet. The air around her grew heavy. Her voice broke. What are you saying? Her hands trembled, holding the letter. He looked at her with eyes that seemed older than his face. Your mother was about to expose a secret inside my company. She disappeared 2 days before the press conference. The police called it an accident, but I knew it wasn't one. She was the only person brave enough to challenge me back then, and the only one I ever respected. I have searched for the truth since that day. Emma's throat felt dry. The words refused to come. You think someone killed her? He nodded slowly. Yes, and I believe the same people are still watching me. That's why I came here, not to relax, not to hide from work, but to finish what she started. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. I needed to see if you carried her courage or just her language, and now I know you have both. She stared at him, every emotion inside her, colliding anger, fear, sorrow, and an odd flicker of faith. She whispered, if what you say is true, then why did you pretend not to understand English? Why did you humiliate me that night? He sighed deeply, because I needed to see how the world treats kindness when no one is watching. Your reaction told me more than 1,000 resumes ever could. You didn't see a billionaire, you saw a lost man. And that is something money can never buy. He turned away for a moment, looking out the window at the sunrise. The light cut across his face, making him look both strong and broken. Emma's voice softened. So what happens now? He reached into his coat and pulled out a small black folder. Inside were photos, documents, bank statements, all tied to a name she recognized from the hospital forms. Mr. Hale, the same man who had been paying for part of her father's treatment. She looked at him shocked. This man helped my father. Why? He smiled faintly. Because he needed leverage to get to you. Hale works for the same group that silenced your mother, and he's still here in this city. Her hands shook. She whispered, what do you want me to do? He said nothing at first, then quietly told her, I want you to go to the hospital tomorrow at noon. He will be there pretending to check on your father. When he speaks to you, listen, but do not answer. Record everything, then bring it to me. She hesitated, and if he's innocent, he met her eyes with a cold stillness. Then we both walk away. But if he's not, you will finally know what really happened. That night. The next day, Emma stood by her father's bed. The machines hummed softly. Hale entered with his usual fake smile, holding flowers. He spoke kindly, but his eyes kept glancing at her phone. She pressed record hidden beneath the blanket. His voice slipped from sweet to sharp. You should have stayed quiet, Emma. Your mother couldn't learn that lesson. She froze inside every word, slicing her chest open. He leaned closer, whispering this time, don't make her mistake. That night she returned to Kaito's suite. Silent, her phone in her shaking hands, he played the audio. His jaw tightening after a few seconds. He turned off the sound and looked at her. It's him, he said calmly. But beneath the calm, she saw rage, pure and personal. He reached for a hidden drawer, pulled out a silver briefcase and opened it. Inside were stacks of files and an old locket. He handed it to her. Inside, the locket was a small photo of her mother and baby Emma together. This belonged to her. He said softly, she wanted you to have it one day. She stared at it, tears burning her eyes. He stepped closer, placing a single envelope beside her on the table. Inside was a ticket and a letterhead with her name printed in gold. Welcome to Thorne Foundation, Director of Cultural Trust. She looked up at him, stunned. He smiled. Not as a billionaire, but as a man stripped of pretense. I built this for her. And now for you, the question is, will you accept a future made from truth, even if it was born in lies? She looked at the locket one last time, then at him, and said only one line, I'll take it. But on my terms. He nodded slowly. That's exactly what your mother said before she walked away from me. Once Emma took a breath, her eyes still wet, but her voice steady. Then maybe this time we finish what she started. And so her story begins not as a waitress, not as a pawn, but as the woman who turned a billionaire's lie into a mission that could change everything. Her mother had died searching for truth. Now it was Emma's turn to live for it. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who still believes kindness can change the ending, because sometimes the quietest people carry the loudest answers.